Hey guys, welcome back. This is Dr. Jesse Morse with the Fantasy Doctors. Today we are going to talk about Odell Beckham Jr. and his injury from 2017 and how it significantly impacted his 17 season, as well as how it could potentially impact his 2018 season. As we know, Odell Beckham is 25. He'll be 26 in November. 15, he had a monster year, 15 games, 96 receptions for 1,450 yards and 13 touchdowns. Literally a top 5 year. This is what we strive for when we pick a top 10 wide receiver, as well as that's kind of what you want when you're picking Beckham again. But unfortunately, his 16 and 17 seasons didn't go quite as well, although his 16 season was still very good. He played all 16 games, 101 receptions and 1,367 yards with 10 TDs. So talent definitely there. Last year, he was hampered by injury. He only ended up playing 4 games, so a quarter of a season. He made 25 receptions. He was basically on target for his normal stuff, 302 yards and 2 touchdowns. 2018, Fantasy Pros has him projected at 96 receptions, 1,257 yards, and 8 TDs. So is that worth a top 5 to 7 pick for wide receiver, in my opinion? No. And here's why. So Fantasy Pros think he's going to be number 3, the number 3 wide receiver. Now, we know that Beckham injured his ankle in the second preseason game of 2017, basically mid-August. He had MRI-confirmed high ankle sprain, the dreaded high ankle sprain. So here's the issue with the high ankle sprains. Think of the middle of your leg, and now the lower part of your leg, right above the ankle. Now, there's a complex or ligaments that basically connect those two bones. Now, the issue is if you damage or break that syndesmotic ligament, it has a tendency to separate this way, which indirectly causes your ankle joint to separate this way as well, which is very painful and uncomfortable. So when you have a sprain of this high ankle variety, this is never good news. Usually 6 to 8 weeks. Some guys even need surgery because of the result. So he basically rested 4 weeks, so he didn't give it the appropriate time. Go figure. Most of these guys all think they're Superman and they can return because they're used to breaking all barriers and all odds. Well, the issue is he returned in week 2, and he showed up in a big way in week 3 with 2 TDs. So obviously, he's back, okay. But then, guess what? Re-injured the ankle in week 4. So, but apparently it wasn't that big of a deal because he was shooted up in week 5. So this is kind of the issue where he gets injured, he tries to fix it, heal it, but then, of course, he doesn't properly give it the appropriate rehab and time and rest and all the different modalities we have to offer, and he comes back too early and he re-injures it again. So, I mean, the issue with having this type of injury is that you have decreased what we call proprioception. You're likely going to be on painkillers in some sort. You're likely going to be not as flexible, so it's harder to land, and it's a very awkward. The lower leg bone only really distributes about 15% of our lower leg weight, with the big bone, the tibia, carrying about 85%. So the problem is you need that fibula, to the small bone, to still house where the ankle joint kind of comes together. So if you manage to injure that ankle again, then obviously it's still a big deal, even though it's not a big weight factor. So of course, Beckham ended up re-injuring that ankle and needed season-ending surgery after fracturing that fibula, that small bone, in early October. So let's talk about spring 2018, because obviously he was done for 17. So we saw him working out at video in UCLA, but he was not able to make strong cuts on that surgically repaired left ankle, which is not completely surprising given the timeline and how much faith he has in that ankle given how much time he's needed. The surgery Beckham had usually carries about a 6 to 9 month return to play, so that means he should be ready to rock and roll by now, early to mid-August. The issue is that rehab is really never done. You need to make sure you do all your P's and Q's, you rehab, you stretch appropriately, you do all the small things to help prevent that ankle and those bones and the muscles and the ligaments from re-injuring easily. So, of course, we had a bunch of off-season talk with Beckham this off-season, with whether it was contract or this video that popped up, and I think it was Paris or whatever. But either way, I don't know if anything is going to come of it, whether it's fines or whatnot. So the good news is that he was able to report to Giants minicamp in April, but he wasn't fully cleared yet, so he really didn't do much. In early June, Beckham returned, but of course didn't participate in team drills, and I don't really blame him, because if he injures himself, then he's not going to get his contract and he'll likely be out for a while. So the camp holdout really didn't last too long, and he's been obviously playing, or at least practicing quite well. Now, posing a question, will Beckham's ankle ever kind of have the same strength or flexibility as his surgery, before his surgery? And no, unfortunately not. I mean, that ankle will never be as if he was 17 ever again. It's been broken. It has likely either screws and or plate or possibly some tie rods or something in there like that. He doesn't have the type of sensation that he used to, whether it's from the surgery or just whatever. He is not going to be able to push off and break off as well as he used to, even though he should be able to do it pretty well. So all of these things need to be taken into consideration when you consider drafting him. So obviously he had a pretty significant injury in 2017. I personally think that it's going to carry over enough in 2018 to where I'm avoiding him. There's no way I'm going to be able to get him if I wait, 5 or 10 or 15 wide receivers, because he's just going too high. In my opinion, he's too high of a risk for the number that you have to spend on him to get there. Whereas you can have someone like a Nuke or a Julio or a Antonio Brown or some of these other guys who didn't come off surgery, and they're less risky, while may not quite have the upside. I'm more of a conservative guy when it comes to my top 2 or 3 picks. I got burned last year with David Johnson, and maybe that's made me a little more conservative, but it is what it is. So, of course, we don't really know how much of those ankle ligaments are damaged, what was damaged besides the one he needed to have surgery on. So, how much of that can re-injure this year? I mean, I know there's some hardware in there, but he didn't have hardware in everywhere, so we have to take that into consideration. And what about his contralateral ankle? Is that still at high risk or even higher risk because of the surgery he had done? These are all questions that should come to mind when you consider drafting him as your number 1 wide receiver. In my opinion, he's going to have decreased flexibility unless he's managed to overcome fantastic odds and come back strong. He will have that decreased sense of touch, which may lead to some increased risk of rolling that ankle or doing something simple and stupid and landing on another player's foot, and all of a sudden he's out for 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks again. So, in my mind, that's what I think about when I see his name pop up. I'm like, I'm going to go safer. So, the risk of re-injury, well, this is kind of difficult to determine. It's definitely not 0. It's definitely not 100%. So I'd say somewhere around 30-ish% for the specific injury. I'll just call it an ankle injury in general. So here's my recommendations for Odell Beckham Jr. in 2018. So the draft season is upon us. Most of you have already drafted or are going to draft. So in the next couple of weeks. So we know the contract talks are there. It doesn't sound like he's really concerned about it, and he just wants to put his performance on the field and let the contract matter settle out where it may, and I think that's a good idea. So the good news is that he didn't suffer a knee injury, which is devastating, and the data shows that. Whether it's a guy like Edelman or Allen Robinson or somebody like that, who had an ACL, or he potentially could have had both if you think about it. So the good news is he didn't have that. While I think it'll take some time for Beckham to get back his legs underneath him, it'll take a couple of games. I mean, he's going to look like the beast of old. I'm a little more worried about Eli, even though he's got his full arsenal back. I mean, he's got OBJ, he's got Sterling Shepard, who I just did a video on and I'm really high on. He also has Ingram, who came out pretty good. He's got Saquon, who's a beast, and as long as they don't stack the box, should see fantastic numbers. So I think there should be some positive regression for Eli, but some of the data shows that Eli just doesn't have it anymore. Whether that's him or the receivers, I guess we'll find out. So for me, I'm still saying you can draft him as a top 15 wide receiver, but my bells are going off in my head saying he's at increased risk, and I personally will not be drafting him. I am fading him just because it's too risky for me. If you want to roll the dice, you may get rewarded, but you may don't be afraid to say I told you so when he re-injures that ankle, and he's down for a couple of weeks. Kind of like a Fournette situation where you almost know he's going to get injured, you're just not sure when or how long. Is it going to be a simple, subtle little thing that just keeps him on the injury report for a couple of days, or is this going to keep him out a month? So draft him as you may. Those are my recommendations. He has the ridiculous talent to be a number one wide receiver. I'm a little concerned about his injury history in order to take him as a top 3 guy. So that's all I have for you today. Stay tuned for some more information, some more podcasts or YouTube videos, or however you're watching this. Feel free to shoot me an email or on my website, drjessemorse.com, or on Twitter at drjessemorse. And follow us at the Fantasy Doctors. We have tons of information coming, and that you can check out anytime. Feel free to send us a message if you have a question about a player, and we'll try to get to it as soon as we can. All right, guys, take care. We'll talk to you soon.